The sun rose over the dusty surface of Xerxes 9, casting long shadows across the rocky landscape. Creel clicked his mandibles as he adjusted the mining drill. His 6 limbs moved with practiced skill, but worry filled his compound eyes. The drill was old and breaking down more often now. If it failed completely, his family would starve. "Father, I have fixed the water filter," called Lixik, his youngest offspring, scurrying over the uneven ground. Creel's antennae twitched with pride. "Good work. Your mother will be pleased." The Valaxian family had lived on Xerxes 9 for 3 cycles now. They came seeking independence after the larger mining corporations pushed independent operators like them off the more hospitable worlds. The planet was harsh, with thin air and strange weather, but it had minerals worth extracting. Enough to survive on, at least. Nearby, other alien species had set up larger operations. The Dravik, tall and heavily armored, ran a military-style mining camp to the north. They barely acknowledged the Valaxians except to warn them away from claimed territory. The blue-skinned Plorians operated a mid-sized commercial operation to the east, sometimes trading equipment for minerals, but always at prices that favored themselves. The Zentari, with their floating platforms and advanced technology, simply ignored the insectoid family as if they were part of the local wildlife. Nixara, Creel's mate, emerged from their dome-shaped habitat carrying tools. Her exoskeleton shimmered slightly in the sunlight. "The atmospheric generator is struggling again," she said. "I've adjusted it, but we may need a new filter soon." Creel's mandibles drooped. "We cannot afford one until the next mineral shipment." Their conversation was interrupted by a strange sound overhead. All 3 of their offspring rushed outside, their smaller forms darting around excitedly. "Look, a new ship," called Trezik, their middle offspring, pointing one limb skyward. The vessel was unlike any they had seen before. It lacked the sharp angles of Dravik ships or the bulbous shape of Plorian crafts. This ship was sleek but sturdy-looking, with a design that somehow suggested both exploration and capability. "What species makes such a vessel?" wondered Nixara. They soon found out. The ship landed several miles away, near the unclaimed western region. Through their viewing scope, the Valaxians observed bipedal creatures emerging, wearing matching blue and gray coverings with some kind of symbol on their chests. "They have only 2 arms and 2 legs," observed Vixel, their eldest offspring. "How do they accomplish anything?" 3 days passed. The Valaxians watched from a distance as the newcomers set up equipment and began taking samples of soil, rock, and plants. They seemed more interested in studying the planet than mining it. On the 4th day, while Creel was working alone at a distant mining site, he encountered one of the strangers. The alien was taller than Creel, with brownish fur on top of its head and smooth pinkish skin. It carried various tools and containers. When it noticed Creel, the alien stopped. Then, surprisingly, it raised one limb and moved it back and forth, a greeting gesture. "Hello," said the alien in oddly accented but understandable trade language. "I'm Lieutenant Jack Miller from Earth. Human. Xenobiologist on the U.S. horizon." Creel was startled. Most species didn't bother learning trade language for talking to minor species like Valaxians. "I am Creel, Valaxian family leader. Mining operator," he responded cautiously. The human came closer, moving slowly. "Those are fascinating tools you're using. Did you design them yourself?" Creel's antennae perked up in surprise. Not, "What are you mining?" or "How much territory do you claim?" but interest in his engineering. "Yes, modified from standard equipment to work with local mineral formations." The human called Jack Miller smiled, showing flat teeth. "Impressive adaptations. Our Captain Susan Clark would love to speak with you. We're explorers, seeking to understand new worlds and make peaceful contact with other species." "Explorers?" Creel's mandibles clicked in confusion. "Not miners or colonizers. We do need resources," Jack admitted, But we believe in fair trade and learning from others. Each species has unique knowledge worth sharing. As they talked, Creel felt something he hadn't experienced since leaving the Valaxian home systems: respect. This human asked about Valaxian culture, their understanding of the planet's environment, and their engineering techniques. He listened to the answers with genuine interest. When Creel cautiously invited Jack to meet his family, the human accepted with obvious excitement. As they walked toward the Valaxian habitat, Creel wondered if perhaps these humans might be different from the other species on Xerxes 9. He had no idea just how important that difference would soon become. The meeting between the Valaxian family and the humans went better than anyone expected. Captain Susan Clark was a tall woman with short gray hair and kind eyes that crinkled when she smiled. She brought small gifts, tools that the Valaxians found useful, and sweet food that their offspring enjoyed. For 3 weeks, the humans visited regularly. Engineer Kelly Peterson helped Creel improve their mining equipment. Dr. Daniel Wright learned about Valaxian biology from Nick Sara, who served as their family's medical expert. The 3 Valaxian offspring followed Security Chief Lisa Johnson everywhere, fascinated by her stories of Earth and other worlds the humans had visited. "Your species is unusual," Nick Sara told Captain Clark one day as they watched the offspring playing with some human crew members. "Most spacefaring races see us as primitive or unimportant." Susan smiled. "Humans have learned that every species has value. Often the most overlooked have the most to teach." Their peaceful exchanges ended on the morning the star began to change. Jack Miller was collecting plant samples near the Valaxian home when the sky turned an angry red. His instruments began beeping wildly. "Captain Clark, to all personnel." His communication device crackled. "Return to the ship immediately. The star is experiencing massive flare activity." Jack looked up to see the Valaxian habitat in the distance. Without hesitation, he ran toward it, rather than back to his ship. Inside the habitat, alarms were sounding. Creel worked frantically at a control panel while Nick Sara gathered their offspring. "Our sensors detect massive solar radiation," Creel explained when Jack burst in. "This planet's crust is unstable. The radiation will trigger." The ground shook violently, throwing them all off balance. A crack appeared in the habitat's dome. "Your atmospheric shields?" Jack asked urgently. "Failing." Nick Sara clicked her mandibles in distress. "We have backups, but not enough for a prolonged event." Jack's communication device activated again. "Miller, where are you?" Captain Clark's voice was tense. "The Dravik, Plorian, and Centauri ships are all lifting off. This is going to be bad." "I'm with the Valaxian family," Jack replied. "Captain, they need help. Their life support systems are failing." There was a pause before Susan responded. "Understood. We're sending a shuttle. But hurry. Our science team says the planet's crust is becoming dangerously unstable." Outside, the sky grew darker as dust clouds rose from newly formed cracks in the ground. Through these cracks, toxic gases began to escape from beneath the planet's surface. Jack helped the Valaxians gather essential supplies. Through the viewport, they could see the large mining ships of the other species rising into the atmosphere. "Did they offer to help anyone else?" Jack asked. Creel's antennae drooped. "They received our distress signal." The Centauri replied only to say that evacuation of non-essential personnel was not economically viable. Another violent shake rattled the habitat. A support beam crashed down, nearly hitting Lixik, the youngest offspring. Jack pulled the small Valaxian to safety just in time. The habitat's main computer station began flashing red warnings. "Atmospheric containment at 30%. It announced in the Valaxian language, which Jack's translator converted. Creel moved quickly to a large data storage unit. "Our family records. 6 generations of knowledge. Engineering designs, cultural history, biological research." "We'll take it," Jack promised. "It's too large for quick transport," Nick Sara said. "But without it, we lose everything that makes us Valaxian." Outside, they heard the rumble of an approaching shuttle. Through the viewport, they saw the human craft navigating through increasingly violent wind gusts. The communication device activated again. "Miller, this is Peterson. Landing is too dangerous. We're going to hover and drop a cable. You'll need to attach it to whatever needs lifting." Another earthquake hit, stronger than before. Part of the habitat's wall collapsed inward. Toxic gas began seeping through. Atmospheric containment at 15%, the computer warned. In the distance, they could see the last of the non-human ships disappearing into the clouds, leaving the planet and the Valaxian family to their fate. "Captain," Jack called into his device, coughing as traces of gas reached him. "We need to hurry. And we're going to need special life support for the Valaxians." The human shuttle lowered through the swirling dust. A cable dropped from its underside. Unlike the others, the humans had come back. The human shuttle hovered shakily in the violent winds. Inside the damaged Valaxian habitat, Jack Miller worked quickly to secure the cable to the family's essential supplies. Atmospheric containment at 10%, the computer warned in an emotionless voice. "We have a problem," Engineer Kelly Peterson called from the shuttle. "Our scanners show the Valaxian breathing system isn't compatible with our life support. The air mixture that's safe for us would poison them." Dr. Daniel Wright's voice joined the conversation. "I'm looking at the biological data Nick Sarah shared with me. Their respiratory system processes gases differently than ours. They need more nitrogen and certain trace elements." Another violent shake rocked the habitat. A section of ceiling collapsed nearby. "We don't have time to debate," Captain Clark said firmly over the communication line. "Get everyone on board. We'll figure out life support once they're safe." Jack helped Nixara gather the three offspring. The young Valaxians trembled, their exoskeletons clicking nervously as they huddled together. "What about our survival equipment?" Creel asked, looking at the remaining supplies. "No time," Jack said. "The shuttle can't carry everything." Creel's compound eyes dimmed slightly. "Then I must say, this data core contains everything. Our family history, our research, our cultural records, generations of knowledge. Without it, we are just refugees with nothing." "Creel, no." Nixara's antennae quivered in distress. Another violent tremor hit. Part of the floor split open, releasing more toxic gas. 7% atmospheric containment, the computer announced. "Shuttle to Miller," Peterson called urgently. "The ground is becoming too unstable. We can't hold this position much longer." Jack made a quick decision. "Captain, I'll stay with Creel to transfer the essential data to portable storage. You take Nixara and the offspring now." "Negative, Lieutenant," Captain Clark replied. "Too dangerous." "With respect, Captain, we can't just leave their entire cultural heritage behind. Not when we can save it." Jack's voice was firm. "Give us 4 hours. By then, we'll have the core data transferred to something we can carry." Communications Officer Ryan Cooper's voice suddenly joined in. "Captain, I volunteered to stay with Miller. I can help with the data transfer and keep communications open." A tense silence followed, broken only by the sound of groaning metal as the habitat continued to break apart. 4 hours, Captain Clark finally agreed. "Not 1 minute more. We'll come back for you." Nixara touched her forehead to Creel's in a Valaxian gesture of deep emotion. "Return to us," she clicked softly in their language. "I will protect our history and return to our family," Creel promised. The youngest offspring, Lixik, surprised everyone by touching Jack's hand with one delicate limb. "Humans help. Humans good," the small Valaxian said in simple trade language. Jack nodded solemnly. "We'll be right behind you." The evacuation happened quickly. Nixara and the 3 offspring were loaded into special containers filled with their atmosphere mixture. Security Chief Lisa Johnson helped carry them aboard the shuttle. As the shuttle door closed, Jack could see Dr. Wright already working on a makeshift life support system for the Valaxians. The shuttle lifted off, fighting against winds that grew stronger by the minute. Through gaps in the swirling dust clouds, Jack could see the massive human ship, U.S. Horizon, waiting in orbit. Once the shuttle was safely away, Jack turned to Creel and Ryan Cooper. Let's work fast. What's the most important data to save first? Creel moved to the data core. Family engineering designs, medical knowledge, historical records. Cooper unpacked portable data storage devices. We should parallel process to maximize transfer speeds. Another violent quake shook the habitat. A support beam crashed down, cutting off access to the exit. 5% atmospheric containment, the computer announced. Outside, the sky had turned almost completely black. Lightning flashed between dust clouds, and the ground continued to break apart. The three of them looked at each other, knowing their situation had just become much more dangerous. The humans will return, Creel said with surprising confidence. Jack nodded. Yes, they promised. They began working against time as the planet around them tore itself apart. Aboard the U.S. Horizon, Captain Susan Clark paced the bridge. The main screen showed the planet's surface, now covered with massive dust storms and split by glowing red cracks. Every few minutes, the ship shook as energy waves from the unstable star hit their shields. Status report on our guests, she ordered. Dr. Daniel Wright appeared on a side screen, looking tired but determined. We've created a temporary life support chamber for the Valaxian family. Nixara is helping us adjust the gas mixtures. The offspring are scared but stable. And the planet? Science Officer Kim Adams shook her head. Deteriorating rapidly, Captain. We're detecting massive seismic activity. The crust is breaking apart in multiple locations. In approximately 5 hours, the planet will become completely uninhabitable. Susan's expression hardened. That gives Miller, Cooper, and Creel only 1 hour after their deadline to get out. She turned to her communication station. Any contact with them? Intermittent, Captain, replied the officer at the station. The radiation is interfering with signals. In the medical bay, Nixara watched anxiously as Dr. Wright adjusted dials on the chamber holding her offspring. The youngest, Lixik, pressed a limb against the clear wall separating them. Your small one is very brave, Dr. Wright said kindly. All my offspring are frightened, Nixara replied. Our kind rarely leaves our home system. They have never experienced such danger. Children are resilient, Wright assured her. Human children, too, would be scared in such a situation. You have offspring? Nixara asked, her antennae moving with curiosity. Wright smiled and took out a small device, showing Nixara an image of 2 small humans, my son and daughter. They live with their other father on Earth. You left your offspring to explore space. Nixara seemed surprised. Temporarily. We serve in rotation so families aren't separated too long. Wright adjusted another dial. I'll return to them in 3 months. Nixara's compound eyes studied the human doctor. Your species values family bonds. We do, Wright nodded. Different kinds of families, but all important. Their conversation was interrupted when the ship shook violently. Back on the surface, Jack, Ryan, and Creel worked frantically. They had transferred about 60% of the critical data when a massive quake hit, stronger than any before. 3% atmospheric containment, the computer warned. Part of the wall collapsed. Toxic gas poured in more quickly now. We need to move to the inner chamber, Creel said, grabbing portable equipment. It has separate air filtering. They rushed through a narrow doorway just as the main room's ceiling collapsed behind them. The inner chamber was small but more secure. How much more critical data needs transferring? Jack asked, coughing slightly from the gas that had reached his lungs. The engineering designs and medical data are saved, Creel said. Now we need the historical and cultural files. Ryan checked their communication device. Cooper to Horizon. We've secured about 60% of critical data. Request update on planetary status. Through static, they heard Science Officer Adams. You have less than 2 hours before total planetary collapse. The shuttle cannot land in current conditions. You'll need to reach higher ground for extraction. Ryan looked at the blocked exit they could see through the inner chamber's small window. That's going to be a problem. Another quake hit. This time, a crack opened in the floor of the inner chamber. Creel nearly fell through, but Jack grabbed him, pulling the Valaxian to safety. Thank you. Creel clicked, his mandibles moving rapidly in what Jack now recognized as a sign of stress. Humans and Valaxians stick together, Jack said firmly. Ryan was checking their equipment. I think we can modify this atmospheric filter to give us limited protection outside. Maybe 15 minutes worth. The nearest high point for shuttle extraction is 20 minutes away on foot, Creel said. Then we move fast, Jack decided. Priority is saving Creel and as much data as we can carry. On the Horizons bridge, an alarm sounded. Captain, called the sensor officer, we're detecting multiple ships entering the system. Identification. Susan asked sharply. 3 Dravik warships, 2 Plorian traders, and a Zentari science vessel. Communications officer Andrea Phillips turned from her station. Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the Zentari vessel. On screen, Susan ordered. A tall, thin alien with silvery skin appeared. Human vessel. This is Overseer Zex of the Zentari Exploration Guild. Our sensors indicate you have remained in orbit around a condemned planet. This is most illogical. We have returned to warn you that the planetary destruction will be total. You must leave immediately. Susan stepped forward. We appreciate your concern, Overseer. However, we still have crew members on the surface retrieving important data. The Zentari seems surprised. You risked crew for mere data. Most inefficient. Not just data, Susan replied firmly. Cultural heritage, history, knowledge. And for a minor species like the Valaxians, the Zentari shook his head. We calculated their survival value against rescue costs. The equation was clear. Susan's eyes narrowed. We used different math. Overseer. Inside the inner chamber of the Valaxian habitat, time was running out. Jack, Ryan, and Creel had managed to transfer 80% of the critical data, but the planet was breaking apart around them. 1% atmospheric containment, the computer warned. Its voice now sounded distorted, breaking up between words. We need to move now, Jack said, securing the portable data storage units. Any longer, and we won't make it to the extraction point. Ryan finished modifying 3 small breathing devices. These should give us 15 minutes of protection from the toxic atmosphere. Not much, but it's all we have. Creel's antennae twitched nervously. The nearest ridge high enough for your shuttle is now closer to 30 minutes away. The last quake changed the landscape. They looked at each other, understanding the math wasn't in their favor. Then we move very fast, Jack said firmly. Humans can sprint when needed. Valaxians too, Creel added with determination. On the bridge of the U.S. horizon, the situation was tense. Captain Susan Clark stood her ground against the alien ships that had returned. Your crew members are certainly dead by now, the Dravik commander stated bluntly, his armored face showing no emotion on the view screen. The environment is lethal to most life forms. Our sensors still detect their life signs, Susan replied, and we're sending a shuttle to extract them. The Plorian Trade Minister's blue face appeared on a split screen. Captain Clark, we respect your loyalty, but this is poor business. You risk a valuable ship and more crew for just 3 lives. 2 of yours, and 1 Valaxian. Every life matters, Susan said simply. Science Officer Kim Adams approached the captain. Ma'am, the shuttle is ready but can't launch until the magnetic storms clear. That gives us about 20 minutes. Will that be enough time? Susan asked quietly. It's going to be very close, Kim admitted. In the medical bay, Nixara suddenly became agitated, her limbs moving in distress. What's wrong? Dr. Wright asked. Our family bond, Nixara explained. Valaxians can sense when family members are in extreme danger. Creel. Her voice trailed off. Wright placed a gentle hand on her upper limb. We'll get them back. Humans don't leave people behind. On the planet's surface, Jack, Ryan, and Creel had left the relative safety of the inner chamber. The world outside was almost unrecognizable. The ground was split by glowing cracks. The air was thick with toxic dust and gas. Lightning flashed constantly overhead. They ran as fast as possible toward higher ground, their modified breathing devices providing thin protection. Save your breath for running, Jack gasped when Ryan tried to speak. Every word uses oxygen. A massive crack suddenly opened in front of them, cutting off their path. Burning gas shot upward from the planet's core. There, Creel pointed to a narrow land bridge spanning the crack. We can cross. The bridge looked dangerously unstable. As they watched, part of it crumbled into the fiery depths below. No other way, Ryan said grimly. Jack went first, testing each step. The bridge shifted under his weight. Behind him came Creel, then Ryan carrying most of the data storage units. Halfway across, the ground shook again. The bridge began to collapse. Run, Jack shouted. They sprinted the remaining distance as the bridge broke apart behind them. Ryan leaped the final gap, barely making it. One of the data units fell from his pack, tumbling into the crack below. No, Creel cried. Keep moving, Jack urged. We saved most of it. Their breathing devices were beginning to fail, the filters clogging with toxic particles. Jack could feel his lungs burning. Ryan stumbled, coughing violently. Creel, whose physiology was better adapted to poor air quality, helped support Ryan. Humans saved my family. Now I save humans. They reached the base of the ridge and began climbing. The summit seemed impossibly far away. Jack checked his communicator. Miller to horizon, he rasped. We're climbing the North Ridge. ETA to summit. He coughed. Uncertain. Through static came Susan's voice. Shuttle launches in 8 minutes. Get to the top, Lieutenant. Ryan collapsed, his breathing too labored to continue. Jack tried to lift him, but his own strength was failing. Leave me, Ryan wheezed. Save yourselves, and the data. Not happening, Jack said between coughs. Creel suddenly pointed upward. Look. Through the toxic clouds, they could see something descending toward them. At first, Jack thought it was the shuttle, but it was too small. It was Engineer Kelly Peterson in a one-person atmospheric suit, carrying extra breathing equipment. Captain thought you might need some help. Kelly called through the suit's speaker as she landed beside them. Jack had never seen a more beautiful sight in his life. Kelly Peterson worked quickly, helping Jack and Ryan into emergency breathing masks. The fresh oxygen revived them almost instantly. The shuttle is 2 minutes from launch, Kelly explained. But we need to reach the top of this ridge. The ground below us won't last much longer. She handed Creel a specially modified mask. Dr. Wright helped design this for Valaxian breathing. It should work. Creel's compound eyes seemed to brighten as he put on the mask. Your doctor remembered our biology. Of course, Kelly said. He's been studying the data Nixera shared since you came aboard. With renewed strength, the 4 of them climbed toward the ridge top. The ground continued to shake, making the climb treacherous. Twice, Jack nearly fell when handholds broke away. Each time, Creel's quick reflexes and multiple limbs helped steady him. Above them, the toxic clouds parted briefly. They could see the U.S. horizon in orbit, its lights visible even in the daytime sky. In space, the alien ships watched with bewilderment. The humans have launched a shuttle, reported as Centauri Observer. They are actually attempting rescue. The Dravik commander grunted. Foolish waste of resources. Yet admirable in its way, mused the Plorian trade minister. Such loyalty might have value in certain markets. On the Horizon's bridge, Captain Susan Clark watched the shuttle's progress on the main screen. The small craft battled through violent atmospheric conditions that threw it sideways multiple times. "Shuttle to horizon," came the pilot's voice. "We're experiencing severe turbulence. Navigation systems compromised. Attempting visual landing only." "Understood, shuttle," Susan replied. "Our sensors show you're on the correct approach. Continue." Science Officer Kim Adams looked up from her station. "Captain, the planet is entering final collapse. Massive tectonic plate movement detected. Time remaining, approximately 12 minutes. Susan's face remained calm, but her knuckles whitened as she gripped the edge of her chair. "Understood." In the medical bay, Nick Sara and her offspring watched on a screen as Dr. Wright narrated what was happening. "The shuttle is approaching now," he said gently. "And look, there they are at the top of the ridge." The youngest offspring chirped excitedly, pointing a small limb at the screen. The other two moved closer to their mother, who wrapped her limbs around them protectively. On the ridge top, Jack, Ryan, Creel and Kelly had arrived just as the shuttle approached. The wind was so strong they had to crouch low to avoid being blown off. The shuttle hovered 10 feet above the ground, unable to land on the unstable surface. "Jump," shouted the pilot through an external speaker. "We can't get any closer." Kelly went first, using her atmospheric suit's small thrusters to reach the shuttle door safely. Jack helped Ryan, who was still weak, to jump next. The shuttle crew pulled him inside. "Your turn," Jack said to Creel. The Valaxian hesitated. "The data units. If we drop them." "We'll jump together," Jack decided. "I'll hold you, you hold the data." The ground beneath them suddenly shifted. A section of the ridge collapsed, leaving them on a shrinking platform of rock. "Now," Jack shouted. He grabbed Creel around the middle and jumped with all his remaining strength. For a moment, they hung in the air. Then Jack felt his jump falling short. They wouldn't make it. Suddenly, a cable shot out from the shuttle door. Ryan and Kelly had thrown it. Jack caught it with one hand, still holding Creel with the other. "Pull," Kelly shouted to the crew inside. The cable began to reel them in slowly. Below them, the ridge completely collapsed into a sea of molten rock. With a final effort, they tumbled through the shuttle door. It slammed shut behind them. "Go! Go! Go!" the pilot shouted. The shuttle rocketed upward, shaking violently as it pushed through the turbulent atmosphere. Warning lights flashed across the control panel. "Hull temperature exceeding safety limits," announced the shuttle's computer. "Structural integrity at 60%. Outside the viewports, they could see pieces of the heat shield breaking away. "We're going to lose the outer hull," the pilot warned. "Everyone brace for emergency acceleration." The shuttle engines fired at maximum power. Everyone was pressed back into their seats by the force. Jack looked over at Creel, who clutched the precious data units tightly with all 6 limbs. The Valaxian met his gaze and made the clicking sound Jack now recognized as their species' version of a smile. On the main ship, tension filled the bridge as they watched the shuttle's approach on the screen. "Shuttle has cleared the atmosphere," reported the sensor officer. "But they've lost 40% of their heat shielding. They're coming in hot." "Open shuttle bay doors," ordered Captain Clark. "Emergency crews stand by. Medical team prepare for possible injuries." Behind the horizon, the planet Xerxes 9 began its final death throes. Massive sections of the crust broke apart, revealing the molten core beneath. The shuttle bay crew watched anxiously as the damaged shuttle approached the U.S. horizon. Its outer hull glowed red-hot from the rapid ascent through the atmosphere. "Shuttle to horizon." The pilot's voice crackled over the comm system. "Control systems failing. Requesting emergency magnetic capture." "Granted," Captain Susan Clark replied from the bridge. "Bay crew stand ready." The shuttle limped toward the open bay doors. As it crossed the threshold, magnetic clamps activated, gently slowing and guiding the damaged craft to a landing pad. The moment it touched down, emergency teams rushed forward. Medical staff led by Dr. Wright were first through the shuttle door. Jack and Ryan were helped out, both coughing but smiling. Kelly followed, removing her atmospheric suit helmet. Last came Creel, still clutching the precious data units. When Creel emerged, a happy clicking sound came from across the shuttle bay. Nixara and the three offspring rushed forward, having insisted on being present for the arrival. The Valaxian family wrapped their limbs around each other in their version of an embrace. The youngest offspring, Lixik, extended a limb toward Jack and ran. "Human friends saved family," Lixik said in simple trade language. From the bridge view screen, Captain Clark and her crew watched as planet Xerxes 9 finally broke apart completely. The brilliant flash lit up space as the planet's core exploded. Then there was only a field of debris where the planet had once been. "The alien ships are hailing us, Captain," reported Communications Officer Andrea Phillips. On screen, Susan ordered. The faces of the Zentari, Dravik, and Plorian leaders appeared. "Impressive rescue, Captain Clark," said the Zentari overseer, his silver face showing what might have been respect. "Though still illogical, you risked much for very little gain." "You clearly value different things than we do," Susan replied. "Perhaps," the Plorian trade minister said thoughtfully, "but we would discuss trade relations with Earth now. Your people show interesting qualities. I'm sure our diplomatic team would be happy to arrange meetings," Susan said politely, "after we've ensured the safety and settlement of the Valaxian family." The Dravik commander's eyes narrowed. "You prioritize refugees over potential alliances with stronger species." "We prioritize doing what's right," Susan said simply. "If that's an issue for future relations, we should know that now." After the communication ended, Susan visited the medical bay. The Valaxian family was there, with Creel and Nixara, helping Dr. Wright connect their data units to the ship's computer. "Captain," Creel said, rising to greet her, "I must show you something important." He activated a holographic display showing complex equations and designs. "What am I looking at?" Susan asked. "Solar stabilization technology," Creel explained. "My great-grandparent developed theoretical models. My parents advanced the work. Nixara and I have been testing small-scale applications." Science Officer Kim Adams studied the display with growing excitement. "Captain, this could prevent disasters like what happened at Xerxes 9. It could save worlds with unstable stars." "The larger species dismissed our work," Nixara added. "Said a minor species couldn't have valuable science." Jack, who was still being treated for lung irritation, spoke up. "That's why the data was so important. It wasn't just cultural heritage." Susan looked at the Valaxian family with new understanding. "What do you plan to do with this technology?" "Share it," Creel said simply, "with those who will use it wisely." 6 months later, the U.S. Horizon returned to Earth. The voyage home had taken longer than planned because they had stopped at 3 different star systems to test the Valaxian solar stabilization technology. Each test had been successful. On Earth, the Valaxian family was granted resident status and positions at the Science Academy. Their technology was already being implemented in systems with unstable stars, saving countless lives. At a formal reception welcoming them to Earth, many officials and dignitaries made speeches. When it was Creel's turn to speak, he kept his words simple. "Many species in space measure value by strength, resources, or numbers," he said. "When disaster came, they calculated our worth and found it too small to save. But humans use different math. They count by hearts, not resources, by lives, not profits." Lixik, who was quickly learning human languages, added in English, "When everyone left our family to die, the humans came back. We will never forget." News of the Valaxian solar stabilization technology spread quickly through the galaxy. Soon, representatives from many smaller species began contacting Earth, seeking alliances. They too had been ignored by the dominant powers. On the Horizon's observation deck, Captain Susan Clark stood with Jack Miller, watching Earth grow larger in the viewport as they approached orbit. "I've been thinking," Susan said. "The universe has many more Valaxians out there, small species with big contributions to make. People the dominant powers ignore. Sounds like we have our next mission. Jack smiled. Exactly. Susan nodded. Let's go find them.